Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Monday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you out there watching. We had a very interesting crypto-filled Super Bowl last night. CJ, excited to get your take on some of those ads, including Coinbase, Crypto.com. Which one was your favorite?
Larry David by far. Although I do really like the uniqueness of the Coinbase ad. I mean, that was really cool. If you're a LeBron fan, that's cool. The Crypto.com one was interesting, but I thought that Larry David was easily the funniest. I mean, when he's got like the Pharaoh get up or whatnot, and he's like, "Let me present to you the wheel." He's like, "What?"
I'm not usually wrong about these
and
things.
you can eat them too. This is stupid. This is never going to work.
Yeah, that was great. I know you love Larry David, so immediately when I saw that, I'm like, oh man, CJ's got to be loving this. But yeah, some great crypto ads in the Super Bowl, getting Bitcoin out there in the conscious of the public. But, CJ, the first one I saw was Coinbase. They had that floating QR code around the screen. And, let's dive into some headlines here because one thing that was all over Twitter last night and this morning was the fact that although, Coinbase did see some success from that ad, one thing that had users going crazy right away was the fact that they went into an outage immediately after that ad played due to more traffic than ever encountered. So, this is, I guess, a sign that the ad was successful, reached a lot of people, almost too successful in a way. But, this is something that if you've been in crypto for a while, if you've been in, even in just 2021, this is something you're probably familiar with at this point already. Whenever we have these periods of time where lots of people are looking at crypto, when the market's moving in one direction, whether it's up or down, with a lot of volatility, Coinbase tends to go down. So, again, last night, another instance of that. But, ultimately that just means that the ad reached a lot of people, I suppose. But once again, this is something that has happened several times throughout the last year. And yeah, CJ, what else we got today?
I'm just going to go into some price action in a moment here. But yeah, it's funny. I saw people on Twitter commenting on that being like, oh, well, they're giving us all the authentic Coinbase experience with the outage. But, congrats for Coinbase. Huge job over the years, just onboarding loads of retail folks who are new to crypto. But with that being said, I do want to jump into some price action here surrounding Bitcoin, take a look at some of the indicators and what we're seeing. Starting out with the daily chart here, lots of fear and uncertainty around just global instability and Russia and the Ukraine and that entire mess. Being said, we still do have a bullish posture on the macro trend indicator on the 1 day. So, short term, I am leaning a little bit bullish as long as we remain above this level at 41K or 41,500 roughly, where that exponential moving average aligns. If we lose that level, then perhaps we could see potential of a continuation to the bottom of this range. The reason why is that I think if you look at this from a more macro perspective, and I do want to talk about a new indicator today, and that is known as the TWAP. And for those of you who have not heard that before, TWAP is just time-weighted average price. And this was originally an indicator created for like large hedge funds and institutions who needed to buy like, $1 billion worth of an asset. But they can't just go and buy the entire order book at one time. So you take this TWAP, you run it on a very short time frame, and you find the days or you find the periods of time during the day where, the liquidity is optimal or price is kind of optimal for a large trader to enter. Ever since, though, there's been a lot of modifications or just applications to various other timeframes that other traders have done. Something that I've seen a lot going around on Twitter and just something to keep an eye on is kind of monthly charts or monthly timeframes, specifically with this TWAP highlighting the beginning of bear markets. Historically, when we've begun to spend time below this TWAP and flip actually negative to the red, we have begun historic bear markets. Of course, we did have the black swan in COVID, which did not actually occur and push us down. But, just quite interesting to see that we're not able to break above that level just yet. So still leaning a little bit bearish from a macro time frame, but from a micro time frame of the daily, still watching for bullish continuation here in the short term. But we can talk more about that and just other technical analysis stuff. But I figure I'd pass it back to you, Monty.
Yeah, thank you, CJ. One thing that we've been talking a lot about over the last couple of weeks here is what's it going to take for Bitcoin to show signs of independence from traditional equity markets? And I think we may be starting to see, some signs of that divergence a little bit here today. And, it's tough to say for sure whether or not, this is independent strength or not, but I think we can look to some, on-chain metrics to kind of tell us why perhaps we're seeing signs of strength at these various levels. And, we talked about the Super Bowl ads and the, what Coinbase has done for retail participants in this market. But one thing that I think is very interesting that, Glassnode put out this morning was that Bitcoin balance on exchanges actually just reached a 3-year low. And, 3-year low, if we think about what that means in terms of like this market cycle, that tells us that at this current point in time, more Bitcoin is being held by long-term holders and whales than it has in any point in the last 3 years. And obviously we can see, if we look at just the last year of price action, an obvious relationship between kind of the balance of Bitcoin on exchanges and, when exactly the bottom or the top is in. Obviously back here, we had an actual bottoming of Bitcoin balance on exchanges during that initial top in May. But ultimately, that was sold into hard. We did see profit taking likely from those long-term holders and whales, in which we saw a large influx of Bitcoin flow onto exchanges. Ultimately, they did buy that dip and we saw it flow back off. But that is what we see when there's typically, profit taking after a strong move to the upside. We see Bitcoin balance on exchanges go up. We're not seeing that right now. That tells me that, these long-term holders, these whales, are not content with selling at these levels. Bitcoin balance on exchanges remains incredibly low. So these whales and, long-term holders are continuing to accumulate. So although we're seeing a little bit of macro uncertainty in traditional equity markets, and we're seeing, that translate into some sell pressure in the S&P and the Qs, Bitcoin, all things considered, has held up actually very well. And I actually, would attribute some of that to, this supply shock that we're seeing on chain, and also just the willingness of these long-term holders and whales to accumulate at these levels, and their unwillingness to sell into the, strength we've seen over the last couple of weeks here. So all of that, I think, is setting up for favorable price action in the near future here. And ultimately, that's what's most encouraging to me, is Bitcoin finally showing some strength independent of traditional equity markets. And it seems like we may finally be getting some signs of that this week here. But, we'll have to keep watching traditional equities, keep watching Bitcoin. Anything you're seeing over in that sector, CJ, here as we start the week?
As for like equities?
Yeah.
Let's take a look. I mean, we opened up pretty much down, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of the direction of price, I mean, one thing that I talked a little bit about on Friday, CJ. Oh yeah, by the way, glad to hear your voice back in full strength. We missed it. We missed you at the end of last week. But one thing that I talked a little bit about was, like, regardless of the direction of price, just in terms of like the volatility and how that's translated from the S&P to Bitcoin, it's usually the exact opposite, where the S&P will show slight moves and then Bitcoin translates that with higher beta and more volatility. But it's actually been the exact opposite, where the S&P has been far more volatile than Bitcoin. The Q is also far more volatile than Bitcoin. So again, I would attribute that to part of the supply shock we're seeing with accumulation from long-term holders. But, ultimately, it is a very unique instance at this point in time where we're seeing Bitcoin and crypto in general being less volatile than traditional equities.
Yeah, especially with the volatility coming from Europe. You can see DAX is having a really rough day. Especially with just European economies and uncertainty with the Russian Ukrainian potential conflict there. Same with UK. Man, look at that. It's quite the bearish engulfing candle on the UKX. And most notably, aside from just traditional equity markets, like in terms of like what will impact Bitcoin the most, I think it has a lot to do with these treasury yields. Have not seen a top in these yields just yet. with the TNX and TYX still increasing and above the 2 level. So, I think we need to go below that 2 level for a more sustained kind of uptrend. Looking at the DXY, what a rebound in the DXY this weekend. And, that's going to put pressure on equity markets as well as crypto. And, we're going to continue to monitor that correlation. But overall, just, it's a nice 1% move, 2% move in Ethereum, but I don't think it's a lot to get excited about just yet. We need like a massive short squeeze, or we need like a settling in like global macro uncertainty to get like a pronounced move to the upside. Right now, I just think it's not a great place to trade, and just kind of we just going to be chopping around here.
Yeah, agreed. And one thing I think will be an important or potentially important catalyst today is the Fed meeting we have coming up here. I'm just going to quickly go ahead and pull up that link. We have a closed board Fed meeting today, February 14th, 2022. It is at 11:30 a.m. I believe that's Eastern Standard Time, so 10:30 a.m. Central. I've seen a lot of speculation as to what we're going to hear out of this meeting on Twitter and whatnot, but I wouldn't expect too much. Most people have their eyes on the meeting in March for some clarity when it comes to rate hikes. I think that we won't get too much, but ultimately, we've seen that in the past where even just providing some stability, or just implying that the Fed is staying the course or kicking the can down the road, that has allowed the markets to run in the past. So we could potentially have this event, acting as a catalyst for some price action later today. We'll be monitoring that closely. But yeah, CJ, I'd agree that right now the market is just kind of chopping around. Not ideal to trade until we get a little bit more, global macro clarity here. So those are just some things we're watching. Anything else you want to add today here before we wrap things up?
Not particularly, but we are going to discuss some strategies and some potential trade insights on our members only Doge of the Day right after this. If you'd like to gain access to that, just check out the link in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content that you saw today. Helps the channel very much, so we appreciate that. But I hope you guys enjoyed the Super Bowl and the commercials and whatnot. And I hope you have a wonderful day in the world wherever you're at. So take care.
Take care, everyone.